Salve. We're back for lines 325 to 330. This is the conclusion of Dido's address to Aeneas. Quid moror an mea Pygmalion dum Moenia frater desturat aut captam ducat Gaetulus iarbas. I'm going to stop there. Quid moror? What do I wait for? Or why do I delay? Meaning, why do I wait for death? Because it's going to happen, as you'll see in the next sentence. This statement is explained by this sentence here. Why do I delay my death? Or why am I waiting for death? What do I wait for, you could also say. An is the question form for or. And you can translate it as or whether this or that, or you can translate it as or. When you're asking a question, and you notice it is a question, we use the form an generally. Am I, and you got to put in the verb again here for it to really make sense, because there's not really a main verb in this. So moror gets put in there again. Am I waiting? And that verb, by the way, is a deponent from moriri. So although it has an active ending, the ristur, merminiantur type ending, it is translated active. Or am I waiting? Or you could say whether I'm waiting for Pygmalion frater while my brother Pygmalion. Am I waiting while my brother, there's brother, Pygmalion, Moenia, Moenia destroys my walls. Whether I'm waiting around for death, meaning while my brother Pygmalion destroys my walls. So he's going to come after me. I have enemies back in Phoenicia. Or Gaetulian Iarbas. Gaetulian just refers to his tribe. Or am I waiting while, you got to put all that in again, or understand it, while Gaetulian Iarbas, Ducat, leads me, you got to put in me away captam, as a captive, or leads me away taken. The form of captam is from capio capere, capi captu, so it is a perfect participle, a perfect passive participle, me having been taken. And since me is feminine and accusative and singular, the ending for here is also feminine, accusative, and singular. Remember, the perfect passive participle follows either the first declension in the feminine or the second declension in the neuter or the masculine. So here's our either or whether or. Whether I am waiting while my brother Pygmalion destroys my walls, or I'm waiting while Gaetulian Iarbas leads me away captive. It's worth it also to note the forms of destruat and ducat, which are present active subjunctives. And if you look at Farr, he has a note on this, says that he calls them anticipatory subjunctives with the doom. The idea of the subjunctive, right, is that it has not actually happened yet. It's not reality. So am I waiting for my brother Pygmalion to destroy my walls? This hasn't happened yet, so we use a subjunctive. Or am I waiting while Gaetulian Iarbas takes me away captive? It could happen in the future, so we're using the subjunctive form here. Farr directs you to the appendix 374 if you want to take a look at it in more detail. Saltem, si qua mihi de te suscepta fuisset, ante fugam suboles. Si quis mihi parvulus aula luderet Aeneas, qui te tamen ore referet. Non equideum nino captac deserta viderer. At least, saltem, adverb, at least, if and if. Notice we have another one of these conditional statements here. Like the other conditional statement we had, it is a contrary to fact condition, so you can read them up more on those if you want to in the appendix of Farr. at least if there had been. Fuisse deserves a little note here. It's a pluperfect subjunctive. We use the perfect stem plus isse plus the endings to form the pluperfect subjunctive in this contrary to fact condition. So at least if there had been, and here's the subject here, suboles, a child, an offspring, suscepta, taken up, to me, that's the dative there, to me, de te, from you, or by you, I guess we could say, ante fugam, before your flight, and then we have another condition after that. So, one more time. At least if there had been an offspring, or a child, having been taken up from you to me before you ran away, or before your flight. Now, so suboles and suscepta go together, and Farr has a little note that the suscepta, this picked up, this is a perfect passive participle from suscipio, that this has the idea of what when a Roman baby was born, the father would pick it up off the ground, and it symbolized that he accepted it as his own. So it could benefit him if he didn't want to accept the son, and he wanted to say that the son was from another lover of his wife or something. He could not pick it up. If he did want to accept the son, and even if he knew perhaps it wasn't from his wife, from him, he could pick it up and raise it as his own. So he had some power to determine this in cases of illegitimacy. So we have here this idea of the son or the offspring being picked up by the father. At least if there had been an offspring picked up by you for me before your flight, and after all that, you could also translate this as begotten from you to me, meaning born from you to me. But it literally has this idea of being picked up too. If quis mihi parvulus aula luderet aeneas, if any little Aeneas, meaning this offspring, if any little Aeneas, got a diminutive form of parvulus. Parvulus is little, but parvulus is even littler when you put ulus on there. Those are the subjects, by the way. If any little Aeneas luderet were playing, that's supposed to be a squiggly, were playing mihi, for me, dative, aula, and this is in aula, meaning in aula, in the palace. So one more time. If any little Aeneas were playing for me in the palace, this idea that he would have left her a child before his departure. And again, remember, after C, this is really an aliquis. Okay, aliquis. Because after sum, ni, nisi, ne, all the alis go away. So it's really any little child, not who or what. Indefinite pronoun. And then we have qui, who would bear yourself, however, on his face. So there's a little clause here. It could be a relative clause of characteristic, or it could still be in this conditional sense, who would bear. That's why we're using an subjunctive form here, imperfect subjunctive. By the way, all of these, well, that's a pluperfect subjunctive. This is an imperfect subjunctive, and this is an imperfect subjunctive. The qui is a subject, who would bear te, yourself. And then in ore, on his face, or with his face, ore is ablative, telling us how he's going to bear Aeneas. He would remind her of Dido because he would have Aeneas's features, being his son. Now we've had all that conditional stuff. This is all the conditions, okay? If you had, if there had been an offspring, and if there was a little Aeneas playing in the palace, who would remind me of you, or who would bear you, however, on his face. Now we have the conclusion for this contrary to fact condition right here. If all this, Then viderer, the subject of that is ego. I, let's read it once. Non equi domnino captac deserta viderer. I would not, and this is a subjunctive also. Remember, we're using the subjunctive here because none of this is reality. This stuff has not actually happened. There's been no child, and there's no little Aeneas playing in the palace. And she's not going to seem to be better if she had this because it didn't happen. So we're using the subjunctive throughout here. I would seem. So we're using that would again. Has that, the subjunctive carries that meaning. I would not seem, indeed, completely capta ac deserta, taken and deserted. Taken, maybe the idea of taken in, deceived and deserted. And since ego is the subject, these here are nominatives that go with ego, so they're singular, nominative, feminine. And I would not seem completely, altogether taken and deceived. Deserted, as in deceived and deserted. Let's do this whole thing one more time. Why am I waiting, or what am I waiting for? Whether I wait while my brother Pygmalion destroys my walls, or I wait while Gaetulian Iarbas leads me as a captive. At least if any offspring, that qua goes with that suboles, by the way. We didn't say that earlier. At least if any offspring would have been begotten by you to me, or picked up from you to me, literally, that have that image in your head, before your flight, before you run away, meaning, if any little Aeneas were playing in the palace for me, who would bear on his face yourself, however, I would not seem, indeed, completely taken and deserted.